Hello. Hello. Happy Friday. Hello. Happy Friday. Hello. Oh. Happy Friday. Hello. What? Oh. Happy Friday. Hello.
Am I getting
Happy
a weird
Friday.
audio loop? What's going on?
Am I getting a weird audio loop? What's going on?
Am I getting a weird
audio loop? What's going on?
Am I getting a weird
audio loop? What's going on?
Am I getting a weird
audio loop? What's going on?
Am I getting a weird
audio loop? What's going on?
Am I getting a weird
audio loop? What's going on?
Am I getting a weird
audio loop? What's going on?
Am I getting a weird
audio loop? What's going on?
cycling through my speakers, 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 How about now? Is that fixed it? Okay, it was an OBS problem, the streaming software. I hope that was a great time for everybody that enjoyed my new single. I see the Sharkies. Hello, Sharkies. Happy Friday. Good start to the stream, right? And it looks like maybe Robot Kyo is here. Robot Kyo. I don't know why I said Robot Kyo. That doesn't, that's not how it is. Izzy says hello too. Ah! Cool. Hi, Izzy. So, before I get started today, before I get really started, before we get reading today, I received a package in the mail this week from our friends the Sharkies. And I really should have waited to open it on stream, but I didn't think about that until afterwards. Because I only, I knew it probably had something to do with the stream, but I just didn't really think about it that way. I should have waited. I wish I had. But I didn't tell them that I'd received it, because I figured they could see that I had gotten it. So, drum roll please. Maybe I should start the no, that's not going to work. Here it is. I love it so much. It's so great. I don't know if Robot Kyo and Izzy were here for when this came up, the chapter we were reading, but in the chapter where the dwarves and Gandalf and Bilbo get rescued from the wargs, as they're hiding up in the tree, they get rescued by the eagles, and there was a bit about how it felt like bacon being scooped up out of the fire, like on a fork and put back on the shelf or something like that. And then there was a mention of eagles aren't forks, however, and we all kind of grabbed onto that. Oh yes, good, you were here. So I haven't put a nail in the wall for it yet, but that's definitely gonna find a spot right back there, and I'm going to keep it forever. Yes, it's so awesome. Eagles aren't forks. I need to prop it up where you guys can see it in the meantime. Maybe right there. Chair's in the way. Now I'm in the way. You can kind of see it there for now. Downside about this art wall is it's kind of like, it's just in that range where it's a little out of focus. So you can see and recognize some of the stuff there. But maybe if I move it over a little. But you can't really make out details too well, I think. I keep leaving the chair in the way so you guys can't see what I'm doing. There we go. You'll catch a glimpse of it occasionally during this stream. Iz thinks it's amazing too. Awesome. So how's everybody's Friday going? Huh? It's a little blue, is it not? Does it not look kind of blue? I wasn't sure what color to make it. I mean, I guess we're coming up on the chapter with the door, so maybe we should make it kind of a... let's see. Hey Google, set computer lights to sepia.
Alright, changing 10 lights to sepia.
Sepia? Is it pronounced sepia? Yeah, Farmhouse may not be typing a huge amount today because she had physio, and so her arm is a little injured. Eagles aren't... Other way. Where am I? Over here. Eagles aren't forks. Oh. Oh. I think that's going to be the thumbnail for today's video when I post it on YouTube. So yeah, how's everybody's week been? It's Friday. While Farmhouse was at physio today, I took a stop by Sakura Media and picked up some things, and also Indigo, because Farmhouse and I are going to go see Shang-Chi. So I decided to pick up some reading materials for that. This isn't the origin story for Shang-Chi. This is picking up comics from 91 through 2012. The first one here features a certain Claude X-Man from Canada. I've only read a little bit of it so far, but it's been pretty entertaining. The first one is very noticeably from the 90s. You know, you've got a lot of, I don't know, it's got that sort of style where everything's really shiny. They made Wolverine look very bestial in it. So, but it does seem entertaining so far, even if like the writing hasn't been incredible, but it's good. Rokia's week was fine, but they're watching on the couch and got it up on your phone for chat, so typing's very slow. Okay, yeah, that's fair. I also, while I was at Sakura, an episode of My Hero Academia that we watched last night reignited my interest in it. I don't know. Parts of it had been a little dull, and I'd read the manga up to a point during the Overhaul arc, but it kind of got difficult to read. I found like the art style was really chaotic at that point, and maybe it's just because of one of the quirks that was. Looks like Wolverine's got quarantine hair, just like me. Oh, let's see. The Sharkies have had an okay weekend thus far. A little tired. Trying to prep for school next week, and Sharky's prepping for a D&D session this Monday. Nice, fun. Farmhouse is back to school next week, too. Yeah, actually back to school, not online classes. So that's exciting. Anyways, yeah, I got partway through the Overhaul arc in the manga, and then we've watched further than that in the anime. And there was an episode of the anime that we got to last night where I was like, oh, that's actually really cool, and it made me want to read the manga again, so I picked up a bunch of volumes of the manga from Sakura. Rokyo is back to school week after next. School all around. Everybody's school. Yeah, so I just picked up some stuff, picking up from where I had stopped reading. Unfortunately, they didn't have... let's see, I picked up from like chapters, or volumes 17 to 20, and then the next volume they had after that was like 28. And so I was like, okay, well, they don't have 21 through 27, so I'll have to hold off and pick those up the next time I see them, or request them from somewhere. I did, you know, in the past enjoy the manga, like, up through to where I stopped reading. It was just, yeah, I don't know. Something about that arc was just like, there was a character whose quirk was like making the walls and stuff move around and things, and maybe that's why it got really hard to read, because like maybe the artist was trying to like embody that by making it look really chaotic, but it actually just kind of made it hard for me to read. So I sort of lost interest for a bit, but that was a while ago. So we are getting quite far into The Hobbit at this point. We are well over halfway through. We're probably more like 2/3 of the way through. We are on, I think we went over this last time, but we are on page 246 out of 364 pages? 365 pages. 246 out of 365. And we are beginning chapter 11 on the doorstep. There we go. That's a decent focus on that one. You can see some rocks and some kind of bird. I don't know what kind of bird that might be. Does anyone have a guess as to what sort of bird we might be looking at? And a doorway in a wall. So I think this light is probably good. And I've got, actually, a matching drink. Tangy. It's not forks, says Mrs. Sharkey. Yeah, no. Whatever it is, it's not an eagle, and it's not forks. I don't think so, anyways. I think we'll probably find out why this particular bird is on the doorstep. I'm actually curious, Sharkies, are you still reading through on your own as well? What are you way ahead of me? Are you way behind right now? Are you keeping pace? What's your progress on this book, separate from the streams? We're just about 12 past now, so I might as well get going on the reading. So I will get back to your answer partway through the chapter, probably. Chapter 11, On the Doorstep. In 2 days going, they rode right up the long lake and passed out into the river running. And now they could all see the lonely mountain towering grim and tall before them. The stream was strong, and their going was slow. At the end of the 3rd day, some miles up the river, they drew in to the left or western bank and disembarked. Here they were joined by the horses, with other provisions and necessaries, and the ponies for their own use that had been sent to meet them. They packed what they could on the ponies, and the rest was made into a store under a tent, but none of the men of the town would stay with them even for the night, so near the shadow of the mountain. "Not at any rate until the songs have come true," said they. It was easier to believe in the dragon, and less easy to believe in Thorin in these wild parts. Indeed, their stores had no need of any guard, for all the land was desolate and empty. So their escort left them, making off swiftly down the river and the shoreward paths, although the night was already drawing on. They spent a cold and lonely night, and their spirits fell. The next day they set off again. Balin and Bilbo rode behind, each leading another pony heavily laden beside him. The others were some way ahead, picking out a low road, for there were no paths. They made northwest, slanting away from the river running, and drawing ever nearer and nearer to a great spur of the mountain that was flung out southwards towards them. It was a weary journey, and a quiet and stealthy one. There was no laughter or song or sound of harps, and the pride and hopes which had stirred in their hearts at the singing of old songs by the lake died away to a plodding gloom. They knew that they were drawing near to the end of their journey, and that it might be a very horrible end. The land about them grew bleak and barren, though once, as Thorin told them, it had been green and fair. There was little grass, and before long there was neither bush nor tree, and only broken and blackened stumps to speak of, ones long vanished. They were coming to the desolation of the dragon, and they were come at the waning of the year. Let's see. Sharky say, yep, we're keeping pace and then some. Got a little excited into this chapter and past it. I can understand that, yeah. They reached the skirts of the mountain all the same, without meeting any danger or any sign of the dragon, other than the wilderness he had made about his lair. The mountain lay dark and silent before them, and ever higher above them. They made their first camp on the western side of the great southern spur, which ended in a height called Raven Hill. On this there had been an old watch-post, but they dared not climb it yet. It was too exposed. Before setting out to search the western spurs of the mountain for the hidden door, on which all their hopes rested, Thorin sent out a scouting expedition to spy out the land to the south, where the front gate stood. For this purpose he chose Balin and Fili and Kili, and with them went Bilbo. They marched under the grey and silent cliffs to the feet of Ravenhill. There the river, after winding a wide loop over the valley of Dale, turned from the mountain on its road to the lake, flowing swift and noisily. Its bank was bare and rocky, tall and steep above the stream, and gazing out from it over the narrow water, foaming and splashing among many boulders, they could see in the wide valley shadowed by the mountain's arms the grey ruins of ancient houses, towers, and walls. Sharky say, it's a passing reference, but that Bilbo is trusted to lead a pony like the dwarves seems to indicate he's treated more like an equal. Watching goes both ways. Farmouse says, Smaug's feng shuiing the place around the mountain. Yeah, that's what this is. Is that how that's feng shui? Feng shuiing the place? Yeah, I think it's shui.
There lies all that is left of Dale, said Balin. The mountain sides were green with woods, and all the sheltered valley rich and pleasant in the days when the bells rang in that town. He looked both sad and grim as he said this. He had been one of Thorin's companions on the day the dragon came.
I think you spelled it right.
They did not dare to follow the river much further towards the gate, but they went on beyond the end of the southern spur, until, lying hidden behind a rock, they could look out and see the dark, cavernous opening in a great cliff wall between the arms of the mountain. Out of it the waters of the running river sprang, and out of it too there came a steam and a dark smoke. Nothing moved in the waste, save the vapor and the water, and every now and again a black and ominous crow. The only sound was the sound of the stony water, and every now and again the harsh croak of a bird. Balin shuddered. "Let us return," he said. "We can do no good here, and I don't like these dark birds. They look like spies of evil." "The dragon is still alive and in the halls under the mountain, then, or so I imagine from the smoke," said the hobbit. "That does not prove it," said Balin, "though I don't doubt you are right. But he might be gone away some time, or he might be lying out on the mountainside keeping watch, and still I expect smokes and steams would come out of the gates. All the halls within must be filled with his foul reek." With such gloomy thoughts, followed ever by croaking crows above them, they made their weary way back to the camp. Only in June they had been guests in the fair house of Elrond, and though autumn was now crawling towards winter, that pleasant time now seemed years ago. All right, so now we've got a little bit of a better timeline spelled out for us. They were alone in the perilous waste without hope of further help. They were at the end of their journey, but as far as ever, it seemed, from the end of their quest. None of them had much spirit left. Now, strange to say, Mr. Baggins had more than the others. He would often borrow Thorin's map and gaze at it, pondering over the runes and the message of the moon letters Elrond had read. It was he that made the dwarves begin the dangerous search on the western slopes for the secret door. They moved their camp then to a long valley, narrower than the great dale in the south where the gates of the river stood, and walled with lower spurs of the mountain. Two of these here thrust forward west from the main mass in long steep-sided ridges that fell ever downwards towards the plain. On this western side there were fewer signs of the dragons' marauding feet, and there was some grass for their ponies. From this western camp, shadowed all day by cliff and wall until the sun began to sink towards the forest, day by day they toiled in parties, searching for paths up the mountainside. If the map was true, somewhere high above the cliff at the valley's head must stand the secret door. Day by day they came back to their camp, without success. But at last, unexpectedly, they found what they were seeking. Fili and Kili and the Hobbit went back one day down the valley and scrambled among the tumbled rocks at its southern corner. About midday, creeping behind a great stone that stood alone like a pillar, Bilbo came on what looked like rough steps going upwards. Following these excitedly, he and the dwarves found traces of a narrow track, often lost, often rediscovered, that wandered on to the top of the southern ridge, and brought them at last to a still narrower ledge, which turned north across the face of the mountain. Looking down, they saw that they were at the top of the cliff at the valley's head, and were gazing down onto their own camp below. Silently, clinging to the rocky wall on their right, they went in a single file along the ledge, till the wall opened and they turned into a little steep-walled bay, grassy-floored, still and quiet. Its entrance, which they had found, could not be seen from below because of the overhang of the cliff, nor from further off because it was so small that it looked like a dark crack and no more. It was not a cave and was open to the sky above, but at its inner end a flat wall rose up that in the lower part, close to the ground, was as smooth and upright as mason's work, but without a joint or crevice to be seen. No sign was there of post or lintel or threshold, nor any sign of bar or bolt or keyhole, yet they did not doubt that they had found the door at last. They beat on it, they thrust and pushed at it, they implored it to move, they spoke fragments of broken spells of opening, and nothing stirred. At last, tired out, they rested on the grass at its feet, and then at evening began their long climb down.
Farmo says she feels like birds are used as spies for evil in Lord of the Rings, so he might not be wrong. Yeah, I mean, I think it kind of goes both ways. But I think, crows look mean and so therefore are evil, and, would only be used by evil people as spies, right? I'm kidding, crows, I love you. Don't pick on me.
There was excitement in the camp that night. In the morning they prepared to move once more. Only Boffer and Bomber were left behind to guard the ponies and such stores as they had brought with them from the river. The others went down the valley and up the newly found path, and so to the narrow ledge. Along this they could carry no bundles or packs, so narrow and breathless was it, with a fall of 150 feet beside them onto sharp rocks below. But each of them took a good coil of rope wound tight about his waist, and so at last, without mishap, they reached the little grassy bay. So they do know how to use rope to attach themselves to one another. Why didn't they do that in Mirkwood? Silly dwarves.
Sharky say at the very least could be an unkindness of ravens.
There they made their third camp, hauling up what they needed from below with their ropes. Down the same way, they were able occasionally to lower one of the more active dwarves, such as Keeley, to exchange such news as there was, or to take a share in the guard below, while Boffer was hauled up to the higher camp. Bomber would not come up either the rope or the path. "I am too fat for such fly walks," he said. "I should turn dizzy and tread on my beard, and then you would be 13 again. And the knotted ropes are too slender for my weight." Luckily for him, that was not true, as you will see. I love these little, hints at something that's going to happen later on that he drops in his writing. Farmo says maybe they didn't have the rope then? Maybe they got it from Lake Town? No, it was described prior to Mirkwood that they had lots of rope. In the meanwhile, some of them explored the ledge beyond the opening and found a path that led higher and higher onto the mountain. But they did not dare to venture very far that way, nor was there much use in it. Out up there, silence reigned, broken by no bird or sound except that of the wind in the crannies of stone. They spoke low and never called or sang, for danger brooded in every rock. Yeah, that's right, they used the rope to get to the boat. The others, who were busy with the secret of the door, had no more success. They were too eager to trouble about the runes or the moon letters, but tried without resting to discover where exactly in the smooth face of the rock the door was hidden. They had brought picks and tools of many sorts from Lake Town, and at first they tried to use these. But when they struck the stone, the handles splintered and jarred their arms cruelly, and the steel heads broke or bent like lead. Mining work, they saw clearly, was no good against the magic that had shut this door, and they grew terrified too of the echoing noise. Bilbo found sitting on the doorstep, lonesome and wearisome. There was not a doorstep, of course, but they used to call the little grassy space between the wall and the opening the doorstep in fun, remembering Bilbo's words long ago at the unexpected party in his Hobbit hole, when he said they could sit on the doorstep till they thought of something. And sit and think they did, or wandered aimlessly about, and glummer they became. Their spirits had risen a little at the discovery of the path, but now they sank into their boots. Yet they would not give it up and go away. The Hobbit was no longer much brighter than the dwarves. He would do nothing but sit with his back to the rock face and stare away west through the opening, over the cliff, over the wide lands, to the black wall of Mirkwood, and the distance beyond, in which he sometimes thought he could catch glimpses of the misty mountains, small and far. If the dwarves asked him what he was doing, he answered, "You said sitting on the doorstep and thinking would be my job, not to mention getting inside, so I am sitting and thinking." But I am afraid he was not thinking much of the job, but of what lay beyond the blue distance, the quiet western land, and the hill and his hobbit hole under it. A large grey stone lay in the center of the grass, and he, if I can get the right page, and he stared moodily at it, or watched the great snails. Ooh, great snails. They seemed to love the little shut-in bay with its walls of cool rock, and there were many of them, of huge size, crawling slowly and stickily along its sides. "Tomorrow begins the last week of autumn," said Thorin one day. "And winter comes after autumn," said Bifur. "And next year after that," said Dwalin, "and our beards will grow till they hang down the cliff to the valley before anything happens here. What is our burglar doing for us? Since he has got an invisible ring and ought to be a specially excellent performer now, I am beginning to think he might go through the front gate and spy things out a bit." Bilbo heard this. The dwarves were on the rocks just above the enclosure where he was sitting, and, "Good gracious," he thought, "so that is what they are beginning to think, is it? It is always poor me that has to get them out of their difficulties, at least since the wizard left. Whatever am I going to do? I might have known that something dreadful would happen to me in the end. I don't think I could bear to see the unhappy Valley of Dale again, And as for that steaming gate... That night he was very miserable and hardly slept. Next day the dwarves all went wandering off in various directions. Some were exercising the ponies down below, some were roving about the mountainside. All day Bilbo sat gloomily in the grassy bay, gazing at the stone, or out west through the narrow opening. He had a queer feeling that he was waiting for something. Perhaps the wizard will suddenly come back today, he thought. If he lifted his head, he could see a glimpse of the distant forest. As the sun turned west, there was a gleam of yellow upon its far roof, as if the light caught the last pale leaves. Soon he saw the orange ball of the sun sinking towards the level of his eyes. He went to the opening, and there, pale and faint, was a thin new moon above the rim of the earth. At that very moment he heard a sharp crack behind him. There, on the grey stone in the grass, was an enormous thrush, nearly coal-black, its pale yellow breast freckled with dark spots. Crack! It had caught a snail and was knocking it on the stone. Crack! Crack! Suddenly, Bilbo understood. Forgetting all danger, he stood on the ledge and hailed the dwarves, shouting and waving. Those that were nearest came tumbling over the rocks and as fast as they could along the ledge to him, wondering what on earth was the matter. The others shouted to be hauled up the ropes, except Bombur, of course. He was asleep. Quickly Bilbo explained. They all fell silent. The Hobbit standing by the grey stone, and the dwarves with wagging beards watching impatiently. The sun sank lower and lower, and their hopes fell. It sank into a belt of reddened cloud and disappeared. The dwarves groaned, but still Bilbo stood almost without moving. The little moon was dipping to the horizon. Evening was coming on. Then suddenly, when their hope was lowest, a red ray of the sun escaped like a finger through a rent in the cloud. A gleam of light came straight through the opening into the bay and fell on the smooth rock face. The old thrush, who had been watching from a high perch with beady eyes and head cocked to one side, gave a sudden trill. There was a loud crack. A flake of rock split from the wall and fell. A hole appeared suddenly about 3 feet from the ground. Quickly, trembling lest the chance should fade, the dwarves rushed to the rock and pushed in vain. "The key! The key!" cried Bilbo. "Where is Thorin?" Thorin hurried up. "The key!" shouted Bilbo. "The key that went with the map! Try it now while there is still time!" Then Thorin stepped up and drew the key on its chain from round his neck. He put it to the hole. It fitted, and it turned. Snap! The gleam went out. The sun sank. The moon was gone, and evening sprang into the sky. Now they all pushed together, and slowly a part of the rock wall gave way. Long straight cracks appeared and widened. A door, 5 feet high and 3 broad, was outlined, and slowly, without a sound, swung inwards. It seemed as if darkness flowed out like a vapor from the hole in the mountainside, and deep darkness in which nothing could be seen lay before their eyes, a yawning mouth leading in and down. And that's the end of chapter 11. Ooh, chapter 12's got a very nice illustration. It's called Inside Information. What might that be, if it'll focus? Now the light's getting dimmer and it won't focus as well. There it is. That's a pretty cool picture. Yeah, a short chapter, but an exciting ending, says Farmhouse. Let's see how long chapter 12 is. I imagine it's going to be a little bit of a longer one. Yeah, chapter 12 goes from page 257 all the way to page 282. So, sleepy boy. So I don't think we have enough time to make it all the way through chapter 12, but it's only 7:30, so we should probably read at least some of it. What do you all think about that? And what do you think about the previous chapter on the doorstep? That was what it was called, right? Yeah, on the doorstep. Sharkies are in for part of chapter 12. Farmo says, Dragon! Our... Sharkies say, Bilbo shouting, the key, like some backseat gamer. Use the key, dang it! Alright, sounds like Robot Keo and Izzy are in as well. There I go again, Robot Keo. I don't know why I can't just say robot with it. It's always got to be robot Keo. Our heroes in this adventure, Robot Kia, the new Kia boat line. Our heroes in this adventure are also moody, and they're all very like their actions are very influenced by what kind of mood they're in. Sharkies say yet again the dwarves are fickle about how useful they think Bilbo is. Yeah, they've got like they're always at his service right after he's helped them, but after like a couple of days have passed, what are you doing for me now though? Vitamin D deficiency. I don't know. They've been out in the sun here on the mountainside, but yeah, just every time they start to get a little bit bummed out about how their journey is going, they all get real moody. And this chapter was shorter than most on Thorin's opinions. Yeah, he didn't give any speeches this chapter. Even when Bilbo was yelling at him to bring the key up, all he did was step forward and use the key. He didn't even give some speech about his ancestors and, his father's father, Thrain, or anything like that, but that's probably for the best anyways. He's the only ones he'd be talking to or everyone that he's been traveling with this whole time, and he's probably not interested in having them hear his voice further. Alright, let's get into chapter 12, shall we? I don't think we're going to get all the way through, but we'll read for a little while anyways. Chapter 12, Inside Information. For a long time the dwarves stood in the dark before the door and debated, until at last Thorin spoke. Alright, here we go. Now is the time for our esteemed Mr. Baggins, who has proved himself a good companion on our long road, and a hobbit full of courage and resource, far exceeding his size, and if I may say so, I was completely wrong, guys, I'm sorry. If I may say so, possessed of good luck far exceeding the usual allowance. Now is the time for him to perform the service for which he was included in our company. Now is the time for him to earn his reward. You are familiar with Thorin's style on important occasions, so I will not give you any more of it, though he went on a good deal longer than this. I was just immediately proven wrong. Here I am saying, oh, Thorin's not going to give any more speeches to these guys. They've all heard it before. He knows they've heard it before. And he just immediately launches into another speech. I should have known better. Farmo says, wow, Tolkien just immediately thumbing his nose at you. That's pretty great. Just instantly proved wrong. Excuse me. All right. It certainly was an important occasion, but Bilbo felt impatient. By now, he was quite familiar with Thorin too, and he knew what he was driving at. If you mean you think it is my job to go into the secret passage first, O Thorin, Thrain's son Oakenshield, may your beard grow ever longer, he said crossly. Say so at once, and have done. I might refuse. I have got you out of 2 messes already, which were hardly in the original bargain, so that I am, I think, already owed some reward. But 3rd time pays for all, as my father used to say, and somehow I don't think I shall refuse. Perhaps I have begun to trust my luck more than I used to in the old days. He meant last spring, before he left his own house, but it seemed centuries ago. But anyway, I think I will go and have a peep at once and get it over. Now, who is coming with me? Bilbo's getting pushy. He did not expect a chorus of volunteers, so he was not disappointed. Fili and Kili looked uncomfortable and stood on one leg, but the others made no pretense of offering, except old Balin, the lookout man, who was rather fond of the Hobbit. He said he would come inside at least, and perhaps a bit of the way too, ready to call for help if necessary. The most that can be said for the dwarves is this. They intended to pay Bilbo really handsomely for his services. They had brought him to do a nasty job for them, and they did not mind the poor little fellow doing it if he would. But they would have all done their best to get him out of trouble, if he got into it, as they did in the case of the trolls at the beginning of their adventures, before they had any particular reasons for being grateful to him. There it is. Dwarves are not heroes, but calculating folk with a great idea of the value of money. Some are tricky and treacherous and pretty bad lots. Some are not, but are decent people like Thorin and company, if you don't expect too much. I feel like maybe Tolkien was worried here that we were all getting a bad opinion of the dwarves. The stars were coming out behind him in a pale sky barred with black, when the hobbit crept through the enchanted door and stole into the mountain. Excuse me. It was far easier going than he expected. This was no goblin entrance or rough wood elves' cave. It was a passage made by dwarves, at the height of their wealth and skill, straight as a ruler, smooth-floored and smooth-sided, going with a gentle, never-varying slope direct to some distant end in the blackness below. Sharkies say, you don't hear too much about evil dwarves in this or Lord of the Rings. Yeah, I mean, there's a little mention here that some of them are tricky and treacherous and pretty bad lots, but no, there's no Dwergar that I'm aware of. I wonder if there is in Silmarillion. I really hope I'm not saying that completely wrong this whole time, every stream. After a while, Balin bade Bilbo, good luck, and stopped where he could still see the faint outline of the door, and by a trick of the echoes of the tunnel, hear the rustle of the whispering voices of the others just outside. Then the hobbit slipped on his ring, and warned by the echoes to take more than hobbits care to make no sound, he crept noiselessly down, down, down into the dark. He was trembling with fear, but his little face was set and grim. Already he was a very different hobbit from the one that had run out without a pocket-handkerchief from Bag End long ago. He had not had a pocket-handkerchief for ages. He loosened his dagger in its sheath, tightened his belt, and went on. Now you are in for it at last, Bilbo Baggins, he said to himself. You went and put your foot right in it that night of the party, and now you have got to pull it out again and pay for it. Dear me, what a fool I was and am. said the least tookish part of him. I have absolutely no use for dragon-guarded treasures, and the whole lot could stay here forever, if only I could wake up and find this beastly tunnel was my own front hall at home.
Farmo says, different culture values monetary savviness and shrewd courage over wanton personal sacrifice. The Sharkies say they think there might be some mention of bad dwarves in the... Is it Silmarillion? I keep saying Silmarillion. Is it Sim? But I don't remember any significant characters. Mostly about elves and human/Numenorians.
I feel like I keep saying Silmarillion. Is it Sim? I'm sorry if I've been messing that up and if you've been yelling at the screen. He did not wake up, of course, but went still on, till all sign of the door behind had faded away. He was altogether alone. Soon he thought it was beginning to feel warm. Is that a kind of glow I seem to see coming right ahead down there? He thought. It was. As he went forward, it grew and grew, till there was no doubt about it. It was a red light, steadily getting redder and redder. Also, it was now undoubtedly hot in the tunnel. Wisps of vapor floated up and past him, and he began to sweat. A sound, too, began to throb in his ears, a sort of bubbling like the noise of a large pot galloping on the fire, mixed with a rumble as of a gigantic tomcat purring. This grew to the unmistakable gurgling noise of some vast animal snoring in its sleep down there in the red glow in front of him.
Sharky say, yep, it's Silmarillion.
Okay, all right. I'm okay with you guys having a typo. That's, it happens. But I'm glad I haven't been, completely getting it wrong this whole time.
Farmo says, dwarven heroes acquired great treasures rather than died great deaths.
That makes sense, yeah. The dwarven heroes were the ones that came back with full packs. It was at this point that Bilbo stopped. Going on from there was the bravest thing he ever did. The tremendous things that happened afterwards were as nothing compared to it. He fought the real battle in the tunnel alone, before he ever saw the vast danger that lay in wait. At any rate, after a short halt, go on he did. And you can picture him coming to the end of the tunnel, an opening of much the same size and shape as the door above. Through it peeps the hobbit's little head. Before him lies the great bottommost cellar or dungeon hall of the ancient dwarves, right at the mountain's root. It is almost dark, so that its vastness can only be dimly guessed. But rising from the near side of the rocky floor, there is a great glow, the glow of Smaug.
All right, just about 7:45. I think we can read a little bit more. Farmo says, if you say Sil with some L's and M's and an Illion at the end, we know what you're talking about. Like trying to pronounce Worcestershire sauce.
Silmarillion.
That was an out-of-place bit of present tense instead of past. Yeah, I wonder if it was trying to establish some dramatic tension there with a, forward creeps the Hobbit. I suppose this is kind of an important part of the book that I'm interrupting with a reading chat.
All right. There he lay, a vast, red golden dragon, fast asleep. A thrumming came from his jaws and nostrils, and wisps of smoke, but his fires were low in slumber. Beneath him, under all his limbs and his huge coiled tail, and about him, on all sides, stretching away across the unseen floors, lay countless piles of precious things, gold, wrought and unwrought, gems and jewels, and silver red-stained in the ruddy light. Smaug lay, with wings folded like an immeasurable bat, turned partly on one side, so that the hobbit could see his underparts and his long pale belly, crusted with gems and fragments of gold from his long lying on his costly bed. Behind him, where the walls were nearest, could dimly be seen coats of mail, helms and axes, swords and spears hanging, and there, in rows, stood great jars and vessels filled with a wealth that could not be guessed. To say that Bilbo's breath was taken away is no description at all. There are no words left to express his staggerment, since men changed the language that they learnt of elves in the days when all the world was wonderful. Bilbo had heard tell and sing of dragon hoards before, but never the splendor, the lust, the glory of such treasure had never yet come home to him. His heart was filled and pierced with enchantment, and with the desire of dwarves, and he gazed motionless, almost forgetting the frightful guardian at the gold beyond price and count.
I wonder whether there was the stereotype of dragons sleeping on hoards of treasure and piles of gold prior to this book. I wonder whether Tolkien got it from somewhere else, or if this was kind of the beginning of dragons sleeping on treasure. I imagine it probably originated prior to this book, but I don't know. He gazed for what seemed an age. Before, drawn almost against his will, he stole from the shadow of the doorway, across the floor to the nearest edge of the mounds of treasure. Above him, the sleeping dragon lay, a dire menace even in his sleep. He grasped a great two-handled cup, as heavy as he could carry, and cast one fearful eye upwards. Smaug stirred a wing, opened a claw. The rumble of his snoring changed its note. Then Bilbo fled. But the dragon did not wake, not yet, but shifted into other dreams of greed and violence, lying there in his stolen hall while the little hobbit toiled back up the long tunnel. His heart was beating, and a more fevered shaking was in his legs than when he was going down, but I imagine it's supposed to be than when he was going down. But still, he clutched the cup, and his chief thought was, "I've done it! This will show them! More like a grocer than a burglar indeed! Well, we'll hear no more of that!" Oh, Bilbo. Nor did he. Balin was overjoyed to see the hobbit again, and as delighted as he was surprised. He picked Bilbo up and carried him out into the open air. It was midnight, and clouds had covered the stars, but Bilbo lay with his eyes shut, gasping and taking pleasure in the feel of the fresh air again, and hardly noticing the excitement of the dwarves, or how they praised him and patted him on the back, and put themselves and all their families for generations to come at his service. I think we'll wrap up pretty shortly here, just after this next bit. The dwarves were still passing the cup from hand to hand and talking delightedly of the recovery of their treasure, when suddenly a vast rumbling woke in the mountain underneath, as if it was an old volcano that had made up its mind to start eruptions once again. The door behind them was pulled nearly to,
and blocked from closing with a stone. But up the long tunnel came the dreadful echoes from far down in the depths of a bellowing and a trampling that made the ground beneath them tremble. Then the dwarves forgot their joy and their confident boasts of a moment before, and cowered down in fright. Smaug was still to be reckoned with. It does not do to leave a live dragon out of your calculations if you live near him. Dragons may not have much real use for all their wealth, but they know it to an ounce as a rule, especially after long possession, and Smaug was no exception. He had passed from an uneasy dream, in which a warrior, altogether insignificant in size but provided with a bitter sword and great courage, figured most unpleasantly, to a doze, and from a doze to wide waking. There was a breath of strange air in his cave. Could there be a draught, from that little hole? He had never felt quite happy about it, though it was so small, and now he glared at it in suspicion, and wondered why he had never blocked it up. Of late, he had half fancied he had caught the dim echoes of a knocking sound from far above that came down through it to his lair. He stirred and stretched forth his neck to sniff. Then he missed the cup. Thieves! Fire! Murder! Such a thing had not happened since first he came to the mountain. His rage passes description, the sort of rage that is only seen when rich folk that have more than they can enjoy suddenly lose something that they have long had but have never before used or wanted. Well, his fire belched forth. The hall smoked. He shook the mountain roots. He thrust his head in vain at the little hole, and then, coiling his length together, roaring like thunder underground, he sped from his deep lair, through its great door, out into the huge passages of the mountain palace, and up towards the front gate. I think we'll stop there. I think that's a good spot. Otherwise, it's getting too exciting. I'm going to have to keep going the whole way through. Sorry. Let me catch up. We were talking about dragons sleeping on treasure, and Pharma says she knows there was a dragon in one of the Beowulf stories, pretty sure. Yeah, well, there have definitely been dragons in mythology and for a very long time. I just don't know specifically about sleeping on treasure. Sharkies say C.S. Lewis used dragons on a hoard as well, so you suspect it was an earlier trope. I wonder which one of the two used it first. I don't know that time frame well enough. Farmos says, yep, it looks like Norse saga had dragons who slept on treasures. Okay, well, there we go. Question answered. Thanks for the research. And Farmos was right about Beowulf. The Sharkies say, not used to seeing draught or draft in writing, so you too did not pronounce it draft at first. English is odd sometimes. Yeah, I think if it's referring to a drink, it might be a draught, and if it's referring to wind, it's a draft. Pharma says it may not be the earliest, but it's the earliest she can find. So we're into an exciting chapter. Definitely reaching the climax of the book. One of the climaxes of the book. I feel like there's a couple of them towards the end here, although I feel like this is really the real climax. But yeah, Bilbo being much braver hobbit than when he left his home, as it is pointed out, and creeping forward down the tunnel. I find that's an interesting point that is made, that yes, later on, Bilbo does exciting things and takes action, but at that moment just creeping down the path, like continuing when he knows there's a dragon ahead, stepping forward. That's the bravest thing that Bilbo had ever done. So, yeah, I think that's an interesting, like, we need to stop and point that out. Also, Thorin's speech at the beginning of that chapter. Oh, Thorin. Oh, Thorin, son of Thror, son of Thrain, Oakenshield. Did I get the order right? I think it was Thror or Thrain. Yeah. Beowulf apparently also stole a cup from the dragon. Oh. I wonder if that was a reference to that then. Bilbo, just like Beowulf. Sharkies, remember the cup theft? I just need to show this off again. Eagles aren't forks. Sharkies, think that bit was compared in one of your English lit classes? Oh, what, between Bilbo and Beowulf? Huh. Well, of course, we're not going to be the only ones to notice that connection. Although I wonder if we are the only ones to come about it in searching whether or not other dragons had slept on treasure. Just the method of discovery. Eagles, not forks. That's going to be one of the this channel's rules from now on. You know, like, be polite, don't swear, no spamming. Eagles aren't forks. Eagles do not equal forks. That's so great. So, any big plans for the weekend, everyone? In about an hour and a half, Farmos and I are going to see Shang-Chi. We're going to go see, the film version of this. So I hope that's good. I like the actor that is playing the title character. Sima Liu, I think it's pronounced, I hope. Who is from Canada, was in the Canadian show Kim's Convenience, which is about a Korean family in Toronto running a convenience store. It's pretty entertaining. First Canadian Marvel hero? Yeah, if you don't count the first Canadian to play a Marvel hero, if you don't count Deadpool. And I'm sure there have been other, but probably first Canadian to play an MCU hero, I would assume. Deadpool is an anti-hero. Oh, well, technicalities. Jeez. I admit I have not kept track of the countries of origin of all of the performers in the MCU. So, maybe. Unless you've looked this up to confirm. Simu Liu? Did a little video on him being the first Canadian. Okay, alright. I wonder whether Ryan Reynolds had a response to that. Also, it's sort of a weird position because, like, Deadpool wasn't a part of the MCU, obviously, prior, and now sort of will be, I guess? I don't know. Has been acquired, so... Which was set up like it was going to be about him being the first of East Asian ethnicity.
Sharkies say that the if it's German, I don't know how to pronounce German things at all. I was gonna take a shot at it, but it's probably like it probably doesn't. I would have to go really like harsh, I imagine, in my pronunciation. Anyways, the German equivalent of King Arthur legends has Sigmund kill a dragon, and I think there was a horde. It's the legend that Wagnerian operas were made from. Is Sigmund the one that bathed in the dragon's blood, but missed a spot? Or was that Achilles? Oh, it was Sigmund? Okay. St. George's dragon had a horde too. Sharky say it was Sigmund that bathed in the blood. Yeah, I've definitely heard of that one. Ramos says Achilles was like ambrosia. Sharky say Achilles was dipped into the river Styx. I see. Oh, and it was like as a baby, so he was held by his leg or something like that, right? And that resulted in the heel. Where was Sigmund's weak spot? Was it just on his side? Like, was it by his kidney or something? Because it was like a leaf landed on him, and so where the leaf landed, a spot didn't get covered by, didn't get contact with the dragon's blood, something like that, right? I don't know, if I was bathing in something like dragon's blood in order to in order to make myself invulnerable, I think I would be very careful. Like, I'd get a brush and I'd really scrub in that blood. No leaf would be getting in my way. Sharkies don't remember, but the legends are at least early medieval. Farmo says there was also like a Norse one where someone drank dragon blood to be able to speak to birds. Not to do with hordes. Yeah. Lots of dragons. But more dragon blood, yeah. Magical properties of dragon blood. Good for a bath, good for a drink. I wonder what magical properties you would get from dragon blood pudding. The many uses of dragon's blood. I don't think it's quite so potent in most Dungeons and Dragons. Settings. Also makes julienne fries. Will not break. It broke. Alright, well, it's just about 10 past 8, and Farmos and I still need to get some kind of pre-movie dinner, because we're going, like, the movie's at 9:30, so we've got to get a little something to eat before then. So I think this is a good time to stop, and leave you all in eager anticipation for Monday evening, where we will have more dragon. Smaug. I'm gonna have to come up with a good dragon voice, aren't I? Dragon, yes. All right. Oh, Robot Kyo with the dragon emoji. Yeah, I'm gonna have to decide exactly what Smaug sounds like. I'm sure there'll be a description that'll influence. But have a good weekend, everybody. I hope everyone has fun. And good luck with the D&D planning, Mr. Sharky. I hope that turns out well. Wait, did you say that was Monday night? I'm gonna scroll back up to the top of this. Prepping for a D&D session this Monday. Oh no! Ended up channeling the voice of the Cave of Wonders without really knowing it. Wow.
one Aladdin reference after the other. Who disturbs my treasure? I guess it's slumber. Slumber, isn't it? Who disturbs my slumber? Yeah, are you guys gonna be busy playing D&D Monday night for this for the Monday stream? That's not gonna be any good. I'm sorry, you're gonna have to reschedule. You're gonna have to reschedule your game, and or put me on during the game. I'll just distract your players. It is I, Bilbo, a humble thief. All right, well, have a good weekend. Try to relax a bit if you get the chance. And hopefully, I will see everybody Monday night at 7 o'clock, when we'll get to more of the exciting climax of this book. Good night, everyone.